Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're looking at this. It's the Harley Benton Duality Delay and Reverb pedal. Now, the Duality is part of Harley Benton's double pedal series of two-sided effects pedals that came out in summer 2022. This is a delay reverb, but there's a bunch of different other options available. For example, the Evil Twin, which is a dual-sided overdrive, which I've already done a video of elsewhere on my channel, and you can see by clicking the little link up there. So today it's the Duality then, and we have 3 different delay types and 3 different reverb types within this pedal. You can use the two sides of the pedal independently from one another, so you can just have reverb or just delay if you want that, or, and this is where the magic is in my opinion, you can stack them both together to have more ambient sounds, delay and reverb together. So what we're going to do in this video then is I will tell you first about the features and the specs of the pedal, then we'll play it in as many different styles as we can so you can hear all of the sounds on offer, and at the end I'll give you my opinions on it, having had it here and played it quite a bit, and I'll tell you if I think it's worth your money at the end of the day, so stick around for that. Let's look into those features and specs then. On this side of the pedal we have the delay side, and there are 3 different delays available here. So these are 3 styles of delay that you'll probably all be familiar with already. The analog is that warm, classic Bucket Brigade style delay. Then we've got real in the middle, which is sort of meant to be a digital delay, I think, but you'll hear that in the playing part to make up your own mind. And then on the right side we have tape, which gives you that beautiful classic tape delay sound. We also have 3 knobs on this side of the pedal. The large one is the time control, which sets the length of time between the delay repeats, which goes from very, very quick, it almost sounds like a double guitar when you turn the time knob all the way down, up to about somewhere near 3/4 of a second based on my manual calculations. The 2 small knobs are for level and feedback. Feedback controls the amount of delay repeats that you get. Does this pedal go into self-oscillation? We'll find out in the playing part. The level control is pretty cool because you can actually have the delay repeats much louder than your original guitar signal if that's something you'd like to do. So that's the delay side, and on the other side we have the reverb side of the pedal. Again, we have 3 switches to access the 3 different modes. On the left we have studio, which is a classic room reverb. In the middle we have church, which simulates a much larger space, a church for example perhaps, and on the right we have plate reverb based on that classic studio plate reverb sound that many of us already know and love. Again, we have 3 controls here to control the reverb and how that sounds. The big knob is the decay, which controls the length of the reverb that you get after you pluck your note. Then you have a mix control, which controls how much of your original signal and how much of the reverb you have in your tone. And then we have a tone control, which controls how dark or bright your reverb tone is. Those are the controls for the 2 sides of the pedal then, and in the middle we have a 3-way switch here that gives you your different routing options. So when it's set to the middle, you can actually cycle between reverb and delay just by pressing one of the foot switches, so you'll only have one on at a time. If you flick it up to the top, you run side A, which is the delay, into side B, which is the reverb, and I think that's probably what most of you will be doing. But you also have the option, if you wish, to flick that switch all the way down and run the reverb into the delay, so that's going to give you a very different sound, and we'll hear all of these again in the playing part of the demo. Up at the top here you can see that you simply plug in via a classic 9-volt power supply. You have an input and an output on the 2 sides. This is a mono pedal only, so no stereo there. If you want stereo reverbs and delays, you're going to have to look elsewhere. So this is the Harley Benton Duality then, 99 euros, 6 different sounds. It should give us a wealth of tonal options, and now what we're going to do is play it. My rig for today is going to be my Epiphone Les Paul running into the Blue Guitar Amp 1 Mercury Edition, and for those of you who regularly watch my channel, you'll know that I don't normally use the Amp 1 because I work for Blue Guitar as my day job, so I don't normally have it in my videos, but I'll give you the reason as to why I'm using that amplifier in the speaking part after the playing samples. Enough talk then, let's play the Duality now, and we'll speak in more detail about it afterwards. Okay then, so that was the Harley Benton Duality reverb and delay pedal, and I hope you like the playing and the sounds on offer. Now with a pedal like this, with 3 different reverbs, 3 different delays, and all the stacking options, there were a bunch of tones to get through, so let me know in the comments below which of the 3 different settings you preferred for each side of the pedal. Did you like the studio, the church, or the plate reverb? Did you like the analog, the real, or the tape delays? Let me know your thoughts down there in the comments and we'll get a little discussion going. But now I'm going to tell you my opinions and my thoughts about having the pedal here at home for a bit and playing it quite extensively. So I would say straight from the off that the Duality is a pretty traditional pedal when it comes to delays and reverbs, especially these days. Now with room, church and plate reverb sounds, there's nothing really out of the box, there's nothing quirky there really. We have cool sounds, but they're sort of staple sounds if you know what I mean. And that's the same when it comes to the delays as well. Analog, real or digital and tape delays, those are great sounds, but those are nothing new. So if you're someone who's looking for a quirkier pedal, if you love your shimmer reverbs, or if you love delays with octaves up and down, that kind of thing, the Duality is not going to be for you. And I think it's safe to say then that the Duality is aimed more at traditional players, because it's really not going for those modern progressive sounds that are actually so popular at the moment. So let me tell you about the things that I like about the Duality. First, it's the sounds. There's nothing crazy or zany in this pedal. It's staple meat and potatoes, standard reverbs and delays. And if that's what you want, this pedal is going to be absolutely ideal, because it does all of the sounds very well. And I do think it's going to be kind of a set and forget pedal. You might have a cool analog delay sound to thicken up your lead tones, for example, and you might want to have an always on studio room reverb sound. Set those up using the 3 knobs on each side here and you're good to go. It's that simple. For me personally, stacking is where it's all about with this pedal. I love running the delay into the reverb side. I tried to create some nice ambient textures during the playing parts, and a pedal like this simply won't go into the depths that something like the Source Audio Collider will. It's just not built for that kind of stuff. And actually there's a refreshing simplicity to the Duality, because you've got the 3 knobs, you've got 3 different options for different sounds on both sides of the pedal, but that's it. There's no menus to dive into, there's no extra tones, there's no secondary foot switch options or anything like that. What you see here is what you get, and I think that some of you might really dig the simplicity of this pedal. So in that sense, it's a pretty cool thing. Otherwise, it does that Harley Benton thing really well of being pretty cheap but very decent quality. It feels nice and solid. It looks good too. I really like this sonic blue finish with the lightning bolt there. If that's important to you, that might be something. And it's also of course a double pedal, so you're going to need less pedals and less power supply cables than you would for 2 separate pedals doing this job. And of course, again, because it's a double pedal, you have those routing options, so you can go from delay into the reverb or vice versa, and that's something that's not so simple if you're running separate pedals. So those are the things that I think are really cool about the Duality. But what about the things that I don't like so much? Well, let's go through those now, and I'll start by saying that while I like the tones of the pedal very much, I do find that it's quite a dark sounding pedal, and I'd like the option to make it a bit brighter. Firstly, with the reverb side, I often found that I had the tone control all the way up just to make it bright enough for my own personal tastes. Now yours may differ, but I do find it to be very dark indeed in this pedal, and the same is true of the delays as well. With an analog delay and with a tape delay, you can expect those to be quite dark, but actually with the real delay in the middle, which I was expecting to be a pristine digital delay, it was just a little bit warm sounding for my personal tastes. Again, that might be something that you would like, but for me personally, I would have liked the option to have more brightness in my tone on both sides of this pedal, in fact. Another general thing to mention that I don't quite like so much is the fact that we've got these mini knobs across the top here. There's nothing wrong with them and they work perfectly fine, but if you've got chunky and clumsy fingers a bit like me, then you might find it a little bit difficult to tweak them in the way you want them at certain times. Again, might not be a problem for you, but something I would change if I was responsible for the design of the pedal. When it comes to the 2 separate sides of the pedal, there's also a couple of things that I would like to change if I were designing it. Now, when it comes to the reverb, the studio mode is just a mode that I don't think this pedal really needs. It's a nice room sound and it's an always on tone, which is really usable, but apart from that, it doesn't really do much. Now, there's no problem with having that, but I do think that with the church mode, and particularly with the plate mode, you can get a great great room sound by turning down the decay, keeping it low in the mix, so the studio mode here was just not really needed. If there was a third free space for a different reverb algorithm, I would have loved to see something like a shimmer or perhaps a modulated reverb or something like that. That's just something I would do if I was designing the reverb side of this pedal. The other thing that didn't quite work for me was the mix control. That controls how much of your dry signal you have in comparison to how much of the reverb. And once you go past 12 o'clock on the mix control, you've got more reverb than dry signal. All the way up on this control gives you no dry signal and just the reverb. And that's a pretty cool novelty effect to use a bit. But for me personally, I found that I was always down at about 9 or 10 o'clock, and that's really where it maxed out for me in terms of finding the setting that I wanted for the mix control. And that's something that I don't personally need to have in my reverb pedals. Again, it might be something you love, but it's just something I wanted to mention. When it comes to the delay side of the pedal, there's one thing that's unfortunately missing on the Duality for me, and that is a tap tempo switch. You can't do tap tempo with the switch here. There's nowhere where you can plug in an external tap switch, and so for me that's a major no-no. I know that some people don't need a tap tempo switch and they're perfectly happy with a time knob like this, but for me personally, I just love the extra convenience of tap tempo, so that's something I'm really missing on this pedal. And the other thing about the delay side of the pedal is the fact that I feel that all three of the algorithms sounded quite similar and samey in some contexts. Now, my personal favorite is the analog. I think it does a really authentic replication of that Bucket Brigade sound. It sounds fantastic. It really sounds like the real thing, and it works really well with all the reverbs. The tape I think is pretty good as well, but it doesn't have the complexity of a tape delay that I like. It doesn't have that wow and flutter. It doesn't have that modulation, that complexity to the tone. So I would upgrade that a bit if I could. And when it comes to the real delay in the middle, I'm a bit confused because I don't actually know what it's supposed to be. For me personally, when I got the pedal, I imagined it would be a pristine digital delay, but it doesn't do that. So what I would do is change the real to pristine digital just to give me different options with the delay side of the pedal. Wait just a second, this is Future Rich speaking from an undetermined period of time later. I'm currently editing this video and I came back across this what is the real delay part of this pedal. Now when I got the pedal I did read the instructions of course, and it referred to the real echo as being a realistic and natural echo delay, which in my opinion suggests that it is going to be a digital type of delay. It didn't sound like that to me, as I've just said, and there was no other information on the Thomann or Harley Benton websites, and I've not seen anything else on the internet at all really telling us what that pedal is. However, during this editing process I've gone back and checked on the Thomann website, and it says that the real echo is actually a space type delay. So there you go. I was happy that it's not a digital delay, but hearing that it's a space echo kind of disappoints me a bit because I've played many other space echo pedals and I don't really think that the real effect on the Duality does justice to some of those other pedals. It's still fairly decent, but it doesn't quite work for me in those contexts. Back to the rest of the video. So those were the things that I didn't quite like so much about the Duality, and there's one more thing that I do have to mention. The eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that I wasn't using my traditional Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 to do this demo, and that's because the Duality actually overloaded the effects loop on that amp, and I couldn't run it into the front of that either. It was too hot for it for some reason, and it just distorted the sound. Now, I had to use the Blue Guitar Amp 1 because you have two different sensitivity options with the effects loop on that amp, which was really practical here because I was able to use the Duality without overloading the signal. What do I mean by overloading the signal? Well, if you have it through the Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 or the other setting on the Blue Guitar Amp 1, it sounds a little bit like this. Which is not that cool a sound, is it really? And if you're thinking of buying this pedal, just be aware that you might have to make some changes when it comes to making it work with your amp. I don't know if that's the case with many other amplifiers, but that's just an experience that I personally had and I wanted to share it with you guys. So if you've been watching this video and you're interested in the idea of the Duality, you really like the dual delay reverb thing, but you want some slightly different options, what else is out there? Well, thankfully, happily, there are a bunch of other delay and reverb pedals, and some of them are at similar price choices to the Duality and perhaps offer even more value for money than this pedal does. They certainly offer more modern options and more modern switching and more modern algorithms as well. The two at the similar price point to the Duality are the Flammer EcoVerb and the NUX Atlantic. Now those are both around 100 or 110 euros or dollars, so very much affordable too, but they offer a more modern take on the delay reverb thing. They also offer things like tap tempo, which I think is really cool. You'll get shimmer reverbs from those pedals, different kinds of delays, and they'll do the traditional sounds too. So those are both very much worth checking out if you like the idea of the Duality, but you want some more modern, more out of the box sounding delay and reverb sounds. Of course, if you're prepared to spend a bit more money, you can also go up and get different style pedals as well that do this kind of thing and probably do it better. Now, one pedal that I really wanted to mention that I've had on my channel recently is the NUX Tape Echo, and there's a link to that up there. That costs around 180 euros currently, and that's actually just one kind of delay and one kind of reverb. But it does this beautiful space echo type of delay sound. It has a great reverb in conjunction with it. It's not a great reverb on its own, but together they sound absolutely heavenly. That pedal has tap tempo and it has a lot of other options, and it's very, very versatile considering it's just one kind of delay and one kind of reverb. So I heartily recommend that if you've got a bit of extra money, you check that one out as well. Video there if you want to see that. And again, if you've got more money, the world is your oyster really. And in fact, if you add another 100 euros to the Duality, you can get something as amazing as the KMA Audio Machines Cirrus, which is a fantastic dual reverb delay made in Germany, and that's currently 199 euros. And if money's no object, well, you can choose something like the Source Audio Collider as well. Now this is a mind-blowingly great sounding pedal with so many options, but it also costs around 4 or 5 times as much as the Duality. Do you need that? Do you need all those different sounds and algorithms and MIDI and tap tempo? If you do, start saving for the Collider today. But if you don't, if you just want 6 really decent, solid and dependable reverb and delay sounds that you can use on their own or stack together, then I would have absolutely no problem in recommending the Duality for that. It's a really decent pedal for those who want what it offers. I hope then that this video has answered all of the questions that you might have had about the Duality. If there's anything else you want to know, drop me a comment down there, ask me a question, and I shall answer to the best of my ability. And hey, if you're still here, consider subscribing to the Rich Words Music channel. It really helps. Like the video, give it a share, whatever it is that the cool kids do these days. But that's been it for today's video. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.